Everybody, the time is 7 p.m. and I welcome you all to our ordinary meeting of Council on the 25th of October 2023. I'll begin by opening the meeting with an acknowledgement of country, and I acknowledge that Council recognises the traditional owners of the lands, waters and skies, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to land, water, sky and the contribution they make to the life and spirit of our community. We pay respect to their elders past and present and extend this respect to all First Nations people. Item 2, present and apologies. We have a full House of Councillors now, which is great. And from an officer perspective, I think we also have everyone in attendance.
Stuart Hanson is an apology, yep.
Thank you. Item 3, pecuniary interest and conflict of interest disclosures. Do I have any conflicts to declare, councillors? Nope. And officers? Nope. Item 4, leave of absence of councillor. There is none. Item 5, public question time. 5.1, public question status update. There are no public questions outstanding. 5.2, public questions. And in accordance with Council's public question time guidelines, I can say we've received 2 questions within the proposed and prescribed timeline. The first question comes from David Kenwood. Would you like me to read the question? In respect to the promised construction of a pedestrian rail crossing as part of the Queenscliff boat ramp redevelopment, could the CEO please provide an update on what needs to happen to break the current impasse over 1, funding now required for the project given the apparent recent cost shifting from Better Boating Victoria to the Borough of Queenscliff. 2, final approvals needed for the construction drawings previously provided by PTV. And 3, an agreed timeline for construction of the pedestrian rail crossing to be completed. I'll invite the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Thank you for the question, David. Before I respond, I might just give a bit of context for some people that maybe not be familiar with the project. So the matter that David's referring to is that the Queenscliff Boat Ramp Upgrade Project had included a proposal to create a formal railway crossing adjacent to the road that links Hesse Street to the boat ramp. This element was included as a provisional item in the tender request for proposal during the project delivery phase. So what do we mean by provisional item? That's an item describing work, the requirement for which is uncertain at the time the tender documents are issued, and which can only be carried out on instruction of the project control group. The successful tender provisional sum for the railway crossing was $17,000 to deliver the works. This amount was agreed to by Better Boating Victoria. The design of these works progressed during this time in consultation with VicTrack and the Borough. At the time of the project opening, design and approvals had yet to be formalised due to ongoing discussions with the railway operator, so that's Bellarine Rail, on a final design and the specifications for that design. At this point, the project control group decided to remove the railway crossing element from the project, but Better Boating Victoria committed to providing the $17,000 to the project if Council decided to proceed with the construction of the railway crossing. Council chose to proceed with the railway crossing and combine that project with the pedestrian link to Hesse Street. Council undertook a request for quote process in May this year, and the project costs exceeded the budget Council had allocated, which included the $17,000 contribution from Better Boating Victoria. So with respect to your question, Mr Kenwood, or David, Council officers are in the process of seeking external grant funding through the TAC, Local Government Grant Program, to help fund that shortfall of the project. TAC has indicated that applicants should be notified of the outcome of this grant in late 2023. Designs for the footpath and the railway crossing have been finalised, and all relevant approvals have been sought and obtained from key stakeholders, including the Department of Transport and Planning, Bellarine Railway and the Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Corporation. timing of the works, as you can imagine, is dependent on the notification and the success of the local government grant from TAC. And assuming that notification is received in late 2023, we're in a position to start pretty quickly. And so we would hope to commence the project in the first quarter of 2024.
Thank you, Martin. Satisfactory? Thanks, David. Our second question comes from the QCA. David, would you like me to read your question? Pardon? Yes, much better, Nick, now. Thanks. The QCA has explained to councillors the need to financially manage its operating deficits as being a critical element of their financial management responsibilities. The annual report highlights staff costs rising over $600,000 for the year 2022 to 2023. This is despite non-filling of vacancies and new positions estimated to have resulted in $313,500 worth of savings. The most recent quarterly financial highlighted the LGPRF deficit/operating loss being $607,000, 150% greater than forecast and no doubt contributed to by significant cost overruns or other reasons. The recent Bellarine Times article highlighted just one cost blowout for the EV charging stations of an additional $30,000, the total cost being $170,000, full cost to ratepayers now a staggering $100,000. Additionally, cost overruns on the hub, the amenities block and the boat ramp items Council has recently taken over have added to the operating deficit. The QCA asks who has authorised such payments, including project variations. What is the CEO doing to curtail or manage such cost impositions? And are councillors concerned when such cost blowouts become evident? I will ask the CEO in the first instance to respond to this.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Thank you for the question and the statements, David. You've raised a number of issues and in both the preamble and the question, and officers would like the opportunity to clarify some of the statements before we do respond. This being the case, I'll take the question on notice and speak to you before preparing a response, which will be included in the next agenda. David, yes, that's the deficit. There's some other things in those reports and in the annual report that help explain that, but given the format they're working in, it's probably not appropriate to have it to and fro. So I'm happy to speak with you, and Gihan and I will meet with you and talk you through all of the things that you're concerned about.
David, we're going to hold it there and move on with the other business of council. The CEO has agreed to provide a fulsome response to answer all components of your question and more. So I'm going to bring public question time to a close. I do thank you for your questions. I know, David, I'm bringing the public question time to a close now. The constant interjection is not helpful. Thank you. Item 6, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. 6.1, Ordinary Council meeting on 27 September 2023. The recommendation before us is that the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on September 27, 2023, as distributed, be confirmed as an accurate record. Do I have someone to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels, and a seconder, Councillor Grigau. All in favour? Thank you, so passed. Item 6.2, Ordinary Council meeting on 27 September 2023, confidential minutes. A copy of the previous confidential minutes from the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 27th of September was distributed to councillors under separate cover, and similarly here the recommendation is that the minutes attached for that meeting as distributed be confirmed as an accurate record. Do I have someone to move this item, please? Thank you, Councillor Grigau. A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Grout. All in favour? Thank you very much. Item 7, record of informal meetings of councillors. The record below is included at adjunct to item 7, and the recommendation is that this list be simply noted. I'm actually going to move this with the following changes, and that is that on the 4th of October 2023, the CEO and councillor meeting, there's one item listed that was discussed around dog restriction on beaches, but in addition to that, the councillor and CEO group discussed Shortlands Bluff progress and Cottage by the Sea Cup event. That's 4th October, CEO and councillor meeting, and I can send through via email the details of that, Jackie. If my colleagues are satisfied with that motion, could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. All in favour? Thank you, so passed. Item 8, notice on motion. 8.1, notice of motion status update. No notice of motion are outstanding. 8.2, motion on notice. No notices of motion were received. Petitions and joint letters, also none received. Functions attended. Council was represented at the following meetings and functions between 21 September and 18 October 2023. We have a recommendation that the functions attended report be received. I have someone to move this. Councillor Grout, thank you. And a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Minty. All in favour? Thank you, so passed. Item 11, Chief Executive Officer. 11.1, Chief Executive Officer Report for October. So I'll hand over to the CEO to talk briefly about this.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I will talk very briefly. I will take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do I have someone in the first instance to put this on the table by moving it? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels, and I think I saw a seconder in Councillor Minty. With the item on the table, are there any questions for the CEO about his report this month? No, no questions. With that, I'll put it to the vote to be received and noted for this month. So all in favour? Thank you, so passed. Item 12, Health and Wellbeing Portfolio. There are no reports to consider. Item 13, Environment. 13.1, Climate Emergency Response Plan 2-year review, and I'll invite our Climate Emergency Response Plan Project Officer, Rebecca Petty-Bramwell, to present this report. Sorry, Beck, could you just check your mic's on?
Can you hear me?
I think it's got to be on. Great.
Now, can you hear me?
Much better, thank you.
Mayor, councillors, borough staff and community, thank you for reading the Climate Emergency Response Plan, CERP, with the revised changes. The report provides an update on the completed 2-year review of Council's community-led Climate Emergency Response Plan, the suggested changes and the revised version for adoption by Council. The review began in December 2022 to ensure the CERP's original contributors were provided an opportunity to contribute feedback. Consultation and feedback occurred from January to March 23. Then, after councillor feedback in May and August 23, officers finalised a reviewed version of the plan, and that is presented here. Our recommendation is that Council adopt the reviewed 2023 version of the Climate Emergency Response Plan as presented, and that the CEO write to thank all community groups and organisations involved in the review and provide them with an update on the plan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Beck. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Minty, and someone to second it? Councillor Ebbels, was there any questions for Beck?
Could you give us a brief outline of a roundabout sum of what the cost implications of any of the changes made to the plan?
There were no cost implications made in the review as from the implementation framework that Council adopted. We've spoken about any new actions that need grants going for, that they need to be applied for. So at this stage, there's no cost implications on that review.
Thank you, Beck. I'll then return to Councillor Minty as the mover to see if you wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Ebbels, do you wish to speak to the motion? Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Grout, thank you.
Thanks, Ross. I am speaking for the motion, but I do want to make the point that I'm disappointed that the councillors weren't involved early in this two-year review with the community leaders. I'm going to support the motion because I know there's a lot of people working really hard to make things happen and really want to encourage that and want it to continue. There's two issues for me and why I made that comment at the start. I think we can still frame and resource some of the actions a bit better, and we really do need this dashboard that we've been promised, or we've been promising, so we can all see, the community can see what the progress has been. But I say again, I'm supporting the motion.
Councillor Grigau, do you wish to speak for or against the motion? I might speak to the motion as well, and that's in support of it, and just acknowledging what the report does, and that's capturing work done, work left to do, and areas that needed refinement or reflection, to acknowledge the context we're operating in from a state, federal and local level, as well as just simply the time that had elapsed, which makes a difference to how we do the job and resource those various actions within the SERP. Engaging David Micklejohn, a sustainability behaviour change consultant who had been part of the initial stakeholder workshops, was a great exercise for councillors and gave us a chance to understand the tenor and the sentiment behind some of the changes. I do echo Councillor Grout's suggestion about councillors desiring or valuing the opportunity to be part of those stakeholder workshops from the beginning, just because of the opportunity it provides us to understand the impetus behind changes and really lever our role as a partner in this document. But on the whole, Beck, I congratulate you and the team for the work, and thank Queenscliff Climate Action Now for their work and their continuation of deep engagement with our community on this very important matter.
Thank you.
With that done, I'll put this item to the vote. So all in favour of the recommendation as put? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Item 14, local economy. There are no reports to consider for this portfolio. Item 15, heritage planning and infrastructure, and in this portfolio there are many reports to consider this month of real significance actually, so it's a big one for Councillor Grout's portfolio. In the first instance, however, I'll invite Bryden King, our Senior Planner, to present the Planning Permit Activity Report for this month.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. Excuse me. This item is just presenting an update of the planning permit activity over the last month, and this report was prepared and published at the close of business on the 16th of October. So that's listed current applications and applications that have been decided and received in the last month. Just to draw to the attention of councillors, at the time of publishing the report, or preparing and publishing the report, the item listed at 1 to 3 Swanston Street in Queenscliff, second from the bottom on page 26 of 81. That was listed with 2 objections. That's since received another 3, so there's 5 objections, and a formal briefing of council will occur based on the protocol on that item. I have nothing else to identify to councillor, and the recommendation is to receive the report, but happy to take any questions, Madam Mayor.
Thanks very much, Bryden. In the first instance, we'll put this one on the table. So a mover, please, in Councillor Grout, and a seconder to accept the report in Councillor Minty. Thank you. So back to councillors. Are there questions for Bryden on this month's report? Councillor Grout.
Yeah, I just have a question, and really just from your experience now working with the Borough of Queenscliff, Mr Planner, if you can indicate the number of active permits I see here is just 12. We've knocked off 7 since the last report, so we've got 9 active, 3 new ones. How does that quantum of work compare with previous months?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Grout. This month was actually a lower overall in and out, if you like. So previous months have been a bit higher than that. From my perspective, I've been thankful for that because one of the key technical officers has been away on extended leave, so that's been a blessing. Having said that, that ebb and flow happens quite regularly between months, depending on where people are in the process and where they're making decisions about investing in development. But yeah, a quieter month. But that has changed since the report's been published, so there's a few more applications that have been lodged in the last couple of weeks.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Further questions for our Senior Planner? With that, I'll put this one to the vote. All in favour accepting the planning report? Thank you, so passed. Bryden, don't go too far because our next item is 15.2, consideration of planning permit application 2022-044 at 6 McDonald Road, Queenscliff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillors. This report is giving an update on the assessment of the application for a helicopter landing site at 6 McDonald Road in Queenscliff. Councillors, apart from Councillor Minty, will be familiar with the process that went through at the end of 2022, where there was a planning review meeting and a number of objections were heard about the matter. And at the council meeting, the matter was deferred from consideration. Since that time, further work has been done to analyse this, the broader issues that have been raised around the environmental impacts of the proposal through both the permit applicant and council officers and the council doing some further work. That's involved two main things to identify to councillors tonight. One was the permit applicant has gone and spoken to the federal government agency under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act about any processes they need to do through that act, which is very separate from any duties that council has in decision-making powers, but for reference and their own knowledge, they undertook a process that's available to them under that legislation of a self-assessment and formed the view they don't need to undertake any processes under that act. They've spoken with federal government agency officers and that's noted, but if any other issues did come up, the federal government reserves its right to undertake further processes under that legislation if need be. And the second element has been that a peer review of the environmental aspects documented in the Nature Advisory Report lodged with the permit application has been undertaken through Council commissioning Ecology and Heritage Partners to do that. They've reviewed that information and analysed some other literature that's been raised through the objections and formed a view that the environmental issues are real, they're on the table, there's things that need to be carefully considered, but also suggested mechanisms that might be available to try and mitigate those environmental impacts, such as where a helicopter might take off and land from to the west to minimise impact to migratory birds and nesting sites that are located further to the east of the site. I will also identify that information's from Ecology and Heritage Partners being shared with all the original objectors and DECA, and the objections all remain in place and have re-emphasised the risk that many in the community see the proposal will have on those environmental values of the area. And DECA took an approach to re-identify all those environmental issues and suggested a precautionary principle be applied, but also suggested movements to the west would seem a more logical element if to mitigate impacts if that's possible. So in the conclusion, for the benefit of councillors, the trigger for a planning permit in this case is a clause in the planning scheme 5215, which is focused on the movement of the helicopter landing and taking off. It doesn't control any movements in the broader airspace. And that issue about a fly neighbourly agreement was also raised in previous discussions, and that is certainly available. That's a separate option that might be available between council and the applicant. The officer's report in this case has identified that the actual permit trigger deals with the key issue of the takeoff and landing, and maybe that's the critical element to consider in weighing up all the issues associated with this matter. The recommendation that's been tabled tonight is similar to that in December, and is seeking to ensure that there's less flights per month and that any movements, both takeoff and landing, only occur to the west to minimise any impacts on those environmental features and assets that are in the surrounding area. I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor, and take any questions as needed.
Thank you, Bryden. So the recommendation, as you said, is to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit under the provisions of clause 52.15 with 7 conditions attached. Do I have someone to move that recommendation?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the following motion, if I could please, which is
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels.
different from the senior planners. That council, having caused notice of planning application number 2022/044 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, the Queenscliff Planning Scheme, and having considered objections and all the matters required under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, resolves to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a planning permit under the provisions of clause 52.15 for use of the land for a helicopter landing site in respect to the land known and described as 6 McDonald's Road, Queenscliff, on the following grounds. The proposal is not sensitive to the environmental values, fauna habitats and natural environments of the foreshore area in which the subject site is located. 2, the helicopter landing site will detract from the broad environmental qualities of the location and have impacts on a range of bird species. 3, the helicopter landing site will unreasonably impact on the environmental qualities of the Ramsar listed areas in proximity to the subject land through proposed takeoff and landings of the helicopter. 4, the helicopter landing site is a use that is at odds with the character of the location, which is focused on minimising impact to the important terrestrial and marine environments adjacent to the area of McDonald's Road. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. Do I have someone to second Councillor Ebbels' alternate motion? Councillor Grout. Councillor Ebbels, do you wish to speak further to the motion?
Yes, please. I think there are many things that we need to consider for myself, but also, obviously the community has certainly taken this on board and certainly let everyone in the community know their concerns about this proposal, and that's why I proposed the motion for consideration tonight. There are a few things that concern me. Obviously, we're unsure of who and how, a possible neighbourly flight path would be monitored, I guess you'd say, trying to work out, who's actually going to, is it a self-monitoring system? If so, I think that's probably flawed. The ecology report talks of the roosting bird life and wonder how the applicant would safely know on a daily basis where the roosting places of the bird life would be. Obviously, as councillors, we're here to represent our whole community, and we must ensure what we do, we can make sure that we ensure that our environment and our wildlife is protected for our future generations. I don't believe that a helicopter taking off and landing for a convenience to the applicant is what we really want as a community here, particularly when it sits on the border of the Ramsar wetlands. I know ecology and heritage partners state that the application is not expected to have significant impacts to migratory birds in the area, but I think any impact on migratory birds in the area is a risk to us as a community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. Councillor Grout, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Yes, I'm speaking for refusal also. Look, 98% of the planning applications this council has received, we've had little problems, and we think that the planners generally do a good job applying our planning scheme and negotiating with the applicants. And of the 2%, there do seem to be some red flags that recur. So a direct call or email is how I might first hear about an application where there may be problems. A first look will then show some obvious conflicts. In this case, it's helicopter and Swan Bay. There are often multiple objections that highlight issues. We sometimes learn that there's been previous works that play into the proposal. In this case, there's some earthworks already. There's an outbuilding that now is going to be a chopper hangar. Our planners and other agencies spend a lot of time and money on issues and justifications. And finally, a red flag is when we get a recommendation that needs a page of conditions to make it work, and it may be difficult to monitor. So where I still have concerns about this proposal is it may well impact on neighbours' amenity. It's a helicopter, and are the neighbours expected to be the monitor? And how can we know the impact on fauna, especially the birds, without significant monitoring? And why do they have to find another habitat? Why do we marginalise or continue to marginalise our fellow creatures? If this applicant can use a helicopter, why not other people who live in the area? And so is it not the local airport that is available to all and more appropriate for air traffic? Helicopter traffic does seem incompatible with our proposal to add Lakers cutting to Ramsar listing. And I'd like to close by quoting a little bit from the G21 proposed strategy for the future of our region. Lakers cutting flora and fauna does have conservation significance. This is why it's proposed for Ramsar. Any change or development here must be sensitive to the environment. We must strive to protect and enhance the beautiful environment that makes Swan Bay special. We must ask ourselves, are regular helicopter flights going to add or detract from the values, stories and culture of this country? Because when our country's healthy, we are all healthy. And for those reasons, I would refuse the permit.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Do others wish to speak for or against this motion?
Ask a few questions.
Go for it. Thank you, Councillor Grigel.
Can I just say, do we actually have a policy regarding, does Council actually have a policy regarding helicopter landings within the borough?
There's no, thank you for the question, Councillor Grigel. There's no policy in the planning scheme about helicopter landings that relate to clause 52.15, no.
Should we then develop one if this is the case we're heading down?
It's something I can definitely take on notice. It's my experience that helicopter landings aren't common in councils that I've been involved with, and I can't think of a policy at the moment that I've ever come across in a planning scheme because they're quite emergent. The planning scheme allows certain helicopter events to happen without needing a planning permit, emergencies, agricultural uses and so on and so on. So, and in areas where there's a low residential areas such as industrial locations, etc., they can happen as well. So there's a certain scope, and the intensity of helicopter landing maybe is something that we need to think about whether that's going to become something in the future. But yes, something to take on notice, Councillor Grigel.
Yep. And I'd like to speak then against this motion because I believe we actually should be backing our planners and our council staff regarding their recommendations. And I'd like to thank Bryden's been working on this project for a good year. She's researched it very well. And I think, he's, as a planning expert, we're paying him to give a recommendation that we actually sort of, think that we know better. And I think that's a very, very poor form that if we don't back our our officers on their recommendations, as you know, it opens us up to sort of scrutiny.
Thank you, Councillor Grigor. Councillor Minty, do you wish to speak for or against the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I too will be speaking against the motion. I will be speaking for the new motion, against the original motion. I apologise. You're welcome. I think picking up Councillor Grigor's point, I think it's probably a fair one to make. Do we have any regulations? But it appears that they are few and far between unless you have a registered airport. And it's a very complex idea of putting one together, because you have to register these things. They have to be either for emergency or personal use, etc., etc. There is a planning practice note 75 produced by the former Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, which is the old DWELP, that explains planning requirements related to helicopters and helicopter landing sites. The publication makes reference to the provisions and makes it clear that once a helicopter is in the air, it's beyond planning control. So basically what we're saying is that once you get it in the air, it can pretty much do whatever it likes, and then there are no controls under that. And that was under a VCAT decision, helicopter landing sites, Metcalfe versus the Surf Coast FC. The difficulty that I see with this is not only in relation to the wildlife in the area, which is extremely important, but also to the residents' current and future for that piece of land. It requires the person who flies the helicopter to, once liftoff is achieved, to turn west, which basically it means you're going to run over the roofs of all your neighbours, because to the east, to the north and to the south is water. So whilst the neighbours may not know it, but they're going to have upwards of 85 decibels of helicopter going over their roofs on a regular basis. And I see that the idea of this particular area as being something very, very special in terms of the amenity for the people who buy it now and for its future value if it's so sold on to other people. So therefore it's I hasten to say unique, but it's a very unusual piece of land, and I think the current residents should think very carefully if they haven't made the decision to make comment on the development. I did look at some decibel and some noise work that was done in the United States, and this particular helicopter, which is specified in this document, does have 85 decibels as a minimum on takeoff and on liftoff. It takes about 30 odd seconds to get it control and to get liftoff. So it's actually in the air for a long, long time on that block of land. And as I say, in my opinion, for the long haul, part of what we offer in the borough is a certain amenity and lifestyle, and it's not conducive on my side of things to look at it as a personal piece of equipment that will affect those people around them immediately and also in the greater Bellarine.
Thank you, Councillor Minty. I also wish to speak in support of the alternate motion put by Councillor Ebbels and the call to refuse to grant a planning permit. I acknowledge that this matter came to Council almost 12 months ago, and to that end I thank those who've remained interested, remained committed to this planning permit application, while, as Bryden said, we've made inquiries or the applicant has made self-referrals to various government and state, federal and state authorities, and perhaps one of the most critical pieces that Bryden mentioned, while we engaged a consultant to undertake a peer review of the biodiversity impact assessment. While it's true that the council decision relates to a very small part of the proposed helicopter flight, that is its takeoff and landing, and certainly officers and councillors have done their due diligence in focusing on that throughout this process, it has been difficult to not consider what happens after that, and that has been critical to us thinking about what impact this has on the amenity and the natural environment around that site. It's not been disclosed as to how the responsible authority would regulate or enforce the proposed limitations on flight numbers and paths, lacking a certainty that I was seeking to potentially entertain granting a permit for sites of such sensitivity, and the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, that is DECA, have also formally indicated concerns about the proposal if movements couldn't be limited to the directions recommended. While the peer review also provided some valuable information, it also failed to test some of the key theories put forward in the initial assessment. And it was the testing of those challenged principles that was so essential, but not presented in my view. The review also failed to obtain several key related and important reference documents, one specifically about the impacts of aircraft activity on the orange-bellied parrot, which calls the site around Burnt Point its home. I echo the sentiments of some of my colleagues tonight in saying that I think the borough has made many commitments through its key strategic documents to preserving the natural environment, the endemic bird and wildlife species who reside in Lakers Cutting and Swan Bay. We are custodians of these special places and diminishing environments, and as such I think we have a duty to look after them. So I reiterate my support for Councillor Ebbels' alternate motion. Councillor Ebbels, do you wish to have a right of reply? Thank you. With that, I will put Councillor Ebbels' alternate motion to refuse to grant a planning permit to the vote. So all in favour? And all opposed? Thank you. Councillor Grigau has called a division. So all in favour of the alternate motion put forward. We have Councillor Grout, Councillor Ebbels, Councillor Tolhurst and Councillor Minty. And all opposed? We have Councillor Grigau. This brings us to item 15.3, another big piece in the planning portfolio, that is the Fisherman's Flat Heritage Review. And I'll invite Dinah O'Brien to present this item, our strategic planner.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'm going to take this report, or understand that this report's been read, so I'll be brief. In early July, August, we received the Fisherman's Flat Heritage Conservation Report from Ecology and Heritage Partners. They undertook a review of the heritage values in Fisherman's Flat and the current provisions of the Queenscliff Planning Scheme. The consolidated analysis and views of the Ecology and Heritage Partners report were presented in the document. The report outlines the findings of the review and recommends seeking authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare and exhibit a planning scheme amendment to incorporate the recommendations of the Ecology and Heritage Partners report into the planning scheme. And as such, the recommendation is that Council endorses the draft heritage review of places in Fisherman's Flat Urban Conservation Precinct report undertaken by Ecology and Heritage Partners for the purpose of preparing an amendment to the Queenscliff Planning Scheme, and also resolves to seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare and exhibit an amendment to the Queenscliff Planning Scheme, specifically to introduce a statement of significance for Fisherman's Flat, amend the Fisherman's Flat Urban Conservation Precinct Heritage Design Guidelines, which were incorporated into our scheme in 2021 with an aim of strengthening policy guidance both for applicants and council officers, and to insert the Heritage Review Place document into the Queenscliff Planning Scheme as a background document.
Many thanks, Dinah. I'll get someone to move this in the first instance, so the recommendation as put forward. Councillor Grout as our mover and Councillor Grigau as our seconder. Are there any questions in the first instance for Dinah?
Dinah, if we do adopt this plan, what would be the next process?
If the plan's adopted, what will happen is in early December, I will formally apply on behalf of Council to the Minister for Planning for authorisation to prepare and exhibit a planning scheme amendment. They then have, and by they I mean the department then has 10 business days in which to make a decision of support the authorisation. or reject the authorisation. If within those 10 days we don't hear anything, it's understood to be accepted and we can prepare the documentation. From that point, I've got 25 business days that are required to speak to Panels Victoria to preset panel dates. And without going into the detail of statutory timeframes, essentially I've got 40 days from the authorisation to prepare and exhibit the amendment, and that probably, in order to capture any input from community members in a meaningful way, means that we won't get into or onto exhibition before late January, early February. So we're not actually exhibiting over a holiday period, which is known to be a problem for people in responding in time. Does that answer your question, Councillor Grigau?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Grigau. If there are no further questions, I'll return to Councillor Grout as our mover to speak to the motion, if you wish.
Yes, thanks, and thanks for reading out the motion, Dinah. Look, I want to moving this motion, which is taking some time to come to us, but I'm really pleased that we have it now. I think these points are important. The proposed planning controls here are much tighter than the current scheme. In particular, we've got strengthened design guidelines, including specific clause about work on outbuildings, which we've called the original fishermen's cottages, the little buildings out the back, some of them with brick chimneys. There's specific clauses about demolition to achieve the design guidelines, such as retaining the modest architectural characteristics, uniformity in mass and scale, and the visual consistency. There's a new statement of significance about the what, how and why Fisherman's Flat is significant. And we include much more accurate review of places as a background document. Now, in the background document, the criteria are much improved about what is contributing and what is non-contributing. Contributing in terms of the key elements, non-contributing particularly the construction post-1960, which gives us a date to work with. The proposal has 51 properties as contributing, which includes some of the outbuildings. Currently in the planning scheme, we only have 16 of the 74 properties contributing. That's from Lovell, Chen, 1984-85. That's a big improvement. I've been told there may be a few errors, but in this proposal, but these can be ironed out during public exhibition period before we take it to the Minister. Now, I'm going to move this motion, noting that this council initiated the study when dealing with 6 Beach Street in the first 2 or 3 months that I was on the council. And we were also picking up unfinished business from the previous council. There was an unresolved Lovell Chen report in 2009, 2020-21. If we don't update our scheme for heritage overlays, and I think the HO1 Fisherman's Flat is the first that we're updating, it's going to continue to cost applicants and ratepayers a lot of money on the case-by-case approach to changes. I think this process is a better way to go, more certainty for all residents or owners of properties. Now, I'd like to particularly thank Dinah for guiding us through this review, and to Ecology Heritage Partners for responding and improving this study from the first draft, and to resident experts, Carmen Bell, and all the contributors to that informal working group whose research has informed so much of the study.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Councillor Grigau is our seconder. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'd like to speak to the motion, saying this is the exact sort of work that sort of councillors really should be concentrating on. You know, the strategic planning, write the rule books, and actually giving the rule books to the officers to follow, and at least the community knows where the goalposts are set, and then, you know, we can proceed with building the community, not constantly shifting goalposts. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. Would anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Ebbels?
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. And yes, I'd like to speak for the motion. And firstly, thank you to Dinah and your officers for all the work you've done in this process. And also, obviously, as Councillor Grout said, to our community who have had a great impact and great input to this report as well. I think, as Councillor Grout mentioned about 6 Beach Street, I think the thing I like most about it is the recommendation that it's to strengthen policy guidance for applicants and council officers, and I'd like to add councillors as well. It certainly will help us in our deliberation of the planning applications for Fisherman's Flat. And I was going to ask a question in regard to the Panels Victoria. Can we preempt and contact Panels Victoria during the advertising period to try and get a date so we can move it along?
It's actually a legislative requirement that we preset panel dates. So there will be a requirement post-authorisation prior to exhibition that we have panel dates preset for directions and hearings.
So is that first thing tomorrow's job?
No, that's
not
probably...
quite.
No,
Thank you.
Not first thing tomorrow. Yes.
Thank you again, Diana. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. Councillor Minty, do you wish to speak for or against the motion?
I'd like to speak for the motion, and I'd like to congratulate ladies and gentlemen that this is a terrific move. These, as Councillor Greer said, it will clarify a lot of things for people who either live here now or will be coming to live here in the future, and for councillors as to the way we can and wish to make decisions about the amenity and what people can expect longevity in the area. I think it's a terrific thing. It's sad Councillor Pizzi's not here to see it, but it's just one of those things that we spoke about often. So, well done.
Thank you, Councillor Minty. I also wish to speak in support of the motion, feeling that fundamentally the consultant engaged has now met their obligations and that any additional feedback, whether significant or minor, can be addressed through the process of exhibiting the proposed changes and, if required, appointing a panel. There have been some really meaningful changes to the document, as Councillor Grout pointed out, including a significant increase to the properties listed as contributory and a statement of significance that details the many ways in which the Fisherman's Flats contributes to the aesthetic, historical and social meaning of our town. This process allows experts to now be the arbiters of the remaining feedback, and I don't think it's about rushing this process, rather it's about following through on a commitment this council has made and aiming to ultimately update the planning scheme to strengthen the heritage values therein. We can't know the appetite of future councils to pursue this work, and Councillor Minty made reference to the wills or desires of a past council, so therein lies the rub. So I feel strongly about getting this work done while we have the opportunity and honouring our commitment made in the council plan to improve planning controls to protect built form heritage values in the Borough of Queenscliff by specifically amending and updating the planning scheme to incorporate the recommendations of the Heritage Review. So thank you, Dinah, for all your work on this, to Tim and others in the team. I'm really hope this motion gets up tonight, obviously, and I'm excited about what comes next, and thank, of course, the community for their significant input. Right of reply, Councillor Grout. Closing comments.
You've just done a very effective reply for the case.
Thank you. With that then, I'll put this motion to the vote. So all in favour of the recommendation as presented? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Dinah. Thank you, Bryden, Dinah. Item 15.4, the last in our most meaty planning agenda yet, and that is an update on the Victorian Container Deposit Scheme from the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I will take the report as written, and I anticipate there may be some questions from the councillors.
Right, do I have someone to move this report? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. And a seconder, please, Councillor Minty. Councillor Ebbels, did you have questions or wish to speak to the motion?
I think possibly both, Mayor Talkers. I'm not
Fire
sure.
away.
Yet. But thank you, Mr. CEO, for the update, and I think it's something that I think the state of Victoria have been talking for about 20 or 30 years, that we'd like to see this actually come to the state of Victoria. I know South Australia started many years ago, and other states have followed suit and improved the process over the years as well. I just I note here that it does talk about the size, and obviously it's 1.3 metres wide. It's not the double-sized container that we're seeing in some of our local shopping centres in Newcombe and Ocean Grove, so it certainly is a lot smaller than we thought it might have been, which is a great thing, and it does contain cartridges so they can fill or empty them as required as well. I just wanted to check with the CEO. So we've got the Queenscliff Bowling Club, so they've been approached by Tomra Cleanaway as a partner, but I know because I've already downloaded the app, the Vic West CDS app, and I noticed that you can have there's a real opportunity for community groups to actually fundraise with that. So even though there is a partner in that, you can actually ask to have your allocation of funds directly deposited into a community group's bank account. I think that's a real opportunity for our community, so they can get involved and do a bit of fundraising. I imagine that I remember as a young boy doing running around the streets of Hamlin Heights and North Geelong collecting beer bottles on the back of a truck, and I think this is a much more efficient way of doing it, and also, but I think it's a real good opportunity that we can have for our community, and some of I think of the Sea Scouts and the community groups. I think there's a real opportunity. So thank you, and thank you for following this through, and that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ebbels. And to confirm, you said you had both a question and wished to speak to the motion. Are you satisfied that you've got out what you needed to get out, or would you like to follow with the question
No,
you said
but
you
I'm
had?
hoping there's a question which you were going to ask, so I'll put you on notice.
Great, thank you.
I just have a question for the CEO. If this container scheme sort of is quite successful with the Bowls Club and they would like to upgrade to the larger container, would they require a planning permit to go through?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Grau. My understanding of the planning scheme is that it would, and obviously that's a little bit determined on what zone and what overlays applied, but the exemptions generally apply for the smaller standalone units rather than the larger container-based units.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. I'll return to Councillor Minty as our seconder. Did you have a question or wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Grout?
Yeah, I've got a question, and it goes to the size of the container. Can you give us some idea how many drink containers would fit in the proposed container? And I ask that question because this is at the bowling club, and I hope that the bowling club doesn't fill up the container after a heavy night.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Grant, and through you. And I must say I feel lucky not to be an expert on this matter, but my understanding is that the facility that we're getting can take up to 1,000 containers at one time, and the cartridge system that Councillor Ebbels referred to earlier is that the partner gets a little ding, and they go out and remove the cartridge. Oh, thank you. They go out and remove the cartridge and replace that cartridge. So it doesn't require an external party to come and replace that cartridge at the time. Yeah, but yeah, after a big night at the Bowls Club, it may be full. Yeah.
I'll probably rein that conversation in before any further accusations about Bowls Club members or attendees are made. And I might ask a question of the CEO too, and that's around understanding that we now have a date for the proposed Tomra Community Information Session.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Yes, we do. Tomra have committed to the 15th of November to come down and provide, I guess, McKenna will kill me. It's not really an information session, but an opportunity for community to come and speak to Toma about the deposit scheme, the proposed location, and to take some feedback before we proceed to the next step. So that'll be here. We'll do some promoting of that event over the next week or so.
Right, thank you very much. With that, if there are no further comments or questions, I'll put noting of this update to the vote. So all in favour? Thank you, so passed. Gone too far. Item 16, Governance and Finance. So this is the presentation of Council's Strategic Risk Register, and I'll invite Manager of Finance and Corporate Services, Guy Hahn, to present this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I'll take the report as having been read, but would like to add a couple of comments, and especially I would like to highlight, I would say, the journey that we have taken so far in relation to this very important area. Now, Council has set up policies and procedures to ensure that we have an effective risk management process in place. In December 2022, Council approved the revised risk management policy, which now clearly outlines the Council's risk appetite. We have a risk management framework developed based on ISO 31000-2018 risk management guidelines, which has been approved by Audit and Risk Committee in April this year. Today we present the Strategic Risk Register, which articulate the risks that could impact Council's strategic objectives. In addition, we are in the process of finalizing operational risk registers to identify, record, and effectively manage the operational risks in each operational area. So if I go back to the strategic risk register which we have presented, so the version provide this point in time snapshot of the identified risks, and councillors and officers will consider this as a living and breathing document, and to ensure the risks are appropriately prioritized and managed. So in the presented strategic risk register, currently we have identified 12 risk items that we have prioritized which require close monitoring. The recommendation is on page 65, councillors, and our recommendation is for council to receive this strategic risk register present.
Many thanks, Guy Hahn. Can I have someone to move the recommendation? Councillor Grigau, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Minty. Councillor Grigau is, I think, just attending to a cough, so I might move to our seconder to see if you wished to speak to the motion or had any questions. Councillor Minty. Just in the nick of time, Councillor I'll give him a break. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion or ask a question of Guy Hahn? Councillor Grau?
Yeah, I'm just really pleased to see strategic risk register, and I think from my perspective anyway, we've identified the main risks in the strategy sphere anyway, and I think I think we've done you've done, and with our input, pretty good job at coming up with some mitigation. So thanks for your work on that, Guy Hahn and team.
Councillor Grigau, back to you.
Right. I'd like to thank Guy Hahn and the finance team for developing this, and we're actually looking forward to working with the Audit and Risk Committee that we are voting on tonight to see it in work. So we'll look and seeing if we required any refinement, but I doubt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. I'd just add thanks to you, Guy Hahn, and the team. You're right, this council has been on a big risk journey in the past 12 months to tighten up, refine and update those key risk documents, which all refer to or are based, the foundations are built on documents and risk frameworks of international standards. So I think that's a real strength to the documentation. And I think the recent review of the register has not only tidied it up, but and brought it in line with auditor recommendations, but certainly brought a new level of ownership to it by this council group. And I really just want to note that the biggest risk, which remains unchanged as both a gross and residual risk, is climate change for this council. The register acknowledges it has far-reaching and multifaceted impacts on all of our community, so managing this remains a priority for council through strategic priorities and commitments, but also by exploring how we better do this as a region with the state and federal government. So, yeah, thank you for your work, and I'm happy to commend this report for adoption. With no further comments, I may put the noting of this risk register to the vote. So all in favour? Thank you. So passed. Item 16.2, Borough of Queenscliff Annual Report 2022 to 2023. Welcome to the lectern, McKenna Bryan, our Comms Coordinator.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Councillors, CEO, fellow staff and the gallery. Here is a copy of the 2022-2023 annual report that I am pleased to be sharing with you this evening. The report with which I'm going to take as read. The Local Government Act, as you are aware, requires Council to prepare an annual report, and Section 100 of that Act requires that Council present the annual report at an open meeting within 4 months of the end of the financial year. Presenting tonight meets that requirement. This year's annual report contains a number of presentation styles that align with our Council Plan, the Local Government Act and planning reporting regulations. The intention of the report is to profile our operations and financial performance in the preceding 12 months. To say preparing a report such as this is a team effort is an understatement. I'd like to thank Cheryl Martin, our graphic designer, who helped put together the visual elements of this report, and would also like to thank Alan Barber, who is responsible for the stunning photography you'll see throughout the document, focusing on our wonderful flora and fauna of the borough. The aesthetics of the annual report are bound together by incorporating elements from an artwork titled Wadawurrung by First Nations artist Chloe Chatterton. I would like to thank Chloe for granting us permission to use her beautiful artwork this way for the annual report. As I've mentioned, the annual report is a document that captures Council's operations and performance of the last 12 months. So I'd like to thank everyone at Council who has contributed to the past year's achievements. And of course, more specifically, a big thank you to the officers and councillors that have helped along the way with bringing this document to fruition. A shout out to Sarah, my comms colleague, who has worked so diligently on this document to get this report where it is today. And ultimately, it really is a team effort to pull a publication of this nature together, and I'm delighted to present the document this evening. I will add, as is often the case with large documents, with fresh eyes, we have determined a handful of edits we'd like to make before we go to print or publish on the website. As such, I ask that the recommendation be amended to request that Council endorse the 2022-2023 annual report, subject to those amendments being implemented. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, McKenna. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Minty.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to formalise the recommendation, I would like to put the words that Council endorses the Borough of Queenscliff Annual Report 2022-23 prior to the publication of the annual report on the Council website. Officers amend the document by completing final edits, including those requested by the Victorian Auditor General's Office.
Thank you. So an expansion on what McKenna put to us, but I think good to have that extra detail. So thank you, Councillor Minty. Do I have a seconder for the alternate motion put by Councillor Minty? Councillor Grigau, thank you. Councillor Minty, any questions, or did you wish to speak to the alternate motion?
No, just some observations. I had the pleasure of reading the document over the weekend, nothing else to do, and I found it very easy to read. The look of the document's fabulous. It does represent our First Nations people in a terrific light, and I believe that the information contained therein is easy to understand and easy to digest for the residents of the borough. And I think they'll be very pleased to receive it.
Many thanks, Councillor Minty. Councillor Grigau.
Just ask McKenna, what would be the estimate of the cost of producing the report, as in the cost of graphic artists, the artwork paid, and the rough time that we've devoted to it?
I'm tempted to take that question on notice, but I think I could probably split it out. There's a series of costs that include graphic art design, the use of the artwork that we've used, photography, as well as printing. So I think it would come up to close to 15,000.
How many copies roughly were we going to print?
We print 30 copies.
30.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. Councillor Ebbels or Grout, do you wish to speak to or for or against the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Tolhurst. I speak for the motion, just to thank McKenna and her team. I think the presentation is fabulous, and I think it's a very easy document to read, and I was very pleased to see the age structure that I'm sitting in the middle of the graph, so that's nice to see for the moment anyway, so thank you. But it was interesting to see that the difference in the age groups. 49.6% of our population are in the 60 to 84 category, whereas the state average is 20%. So I think it's probably something we already know, but it's always nice to see it in writing. But well done, McKenna, and to Sarah and everyone else involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. Councillor Grout, do you wish to speak? No. I'll add some comment, McKenna, and it's to reiterate the message already put forward. Thanks to you and Sarah. It's an absolutely enormous document, and by taking it as read, you've done the right thing, but it's 196 pages, so it's no small feat to complete a document of that scale, noting that there's a huge amount of legislative requirements therein, as well as the story we want to tell about where we're at in terms of achieving our council plan and really the work that lies ahead. So very much just a thanks from me on a great job, and also thrilled to see Chloe's artwork and the wonderful imagery dotted throughout. And I know we're going to get extra use out of that as well. And it's not a one-time use for those brilliant bits of art as well. Back to you, Councillor Minty, if you wanted to make any closing comments.
I think what Councillor Ebbels was talking about in terms of the age groups, there is a lot of data about the types of people that live in our borough, and I think that anybody who takes the opportunity to look through that information will understand what a great place it is, and how many organisations there are supporting them, and the reasons why. I think it's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I will put the amended motion to the vote. So all in favour of adopting subject to changes? Thank you. Adopted unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, McKenna. That brings us to item 17, the signing and sealing of documents, in which there are no reports to consider. Item 18, questions without notice. 18.1, questions without notice, status update, and there are no questions without notice outstanding. 18.2, questions without notice, and I now call for questions from councillors if they are here tonight. No? Okay.
Just a clarification with the CEO regarding the solar panels used on the new hub. Were they new panels, or were they the old ones reinstalled?
Through you, Mayor, my understanding in the contract was that we took them down and then reinstalled them, so they're the same panels as that were originally there. Yep.
Councillors, if there are no further questions for the Mayor or CEO, I'll move on to our remaining items. And that is item 19, list of upcoming council meetings. We have a planning review on Wednesday, 8 November, if required, a councillor listening post on Sunday, 12 November, and I think this Sunday as well. At the Queenscliff Market. The location will be on the website, but we are available to hear your questions and talk about matters of importance in the public sphere this Sunday, and obviously the next ordinary meeting of Council on Wednesday, the 22nd of November 2023 from 7 p.m. Item 20 is closed session of meeting. So I now close the meeting, to consider the confidential items. So the recommendation is that in accordance with sections 66.1 and 66.2a of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting be closed to members of the public for consideration of the following item. That is 20.1, Audit and Risk Committee appointment of independent members. Do I have someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. I've got a mover. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Minty. All in favour? Thank you. We now ask the gallery to leave. Thank you for joining us tonight.